Truly, I think this might be the best looking electric SUV to launch recently.
I'm totally in love with the styling of this vehicle, including this color.
These seats rock, by the way.
I love what they've done with the headlights.
This might be the one to go for.
Remember the first Acura ZDX? It was kind of a giant weirdo. Though some people were in love with its ugly duckling charm, the ZDX never caught on, and it survived from just 2010 to 2013. Rest in peace. Obviously, the 2024 ZDX shares nothing in common with that car, but bringing the name back to life is kind of fun.
You know, who would have thought Acura, which hasn't talked about anything really plug-in electric at all, even their NSX is just a regular hybrid, which is a really cool car. But we didn't expect them to come out with such a hot and great electric vehicle from the start.
This is a two-row, mid-size, all-electric crossover and will come in two flavors, A-Spec and Type S. The former can drive an Acura estimated 325 miles on a single charge, and the latter has 500 horsepower.
What Acura was able to do, of course, is to really control the design experience. So they engineered the look of the interior and exterior using the GM Ultium platform. And I think they did a great job. Truly, I think this might be the best looking electric SUV to launch recently. Smokes Lyriq, smokes Blazer, just doesn't look weird or odd. It looks kind of cool.
Now that the sun is going down, we can actually see this. Look at this cool little lighting detail surrounding the grille. I'm pretty sure they're going to keep that for all of their future EVs, but don't quote me on that. I love what they've done with the headlights. They have the cool, they call it the chicane DRL signature. It looks really neat in this application. The face of the ZDX is really imposing, and it's super wide as well, just the way the car sits.
And then you can see the massive Acura logo here. That's going to house the camera, which is nicely integrated, and of course the Acura Watch 360 Plus, which is actually a new technology on the ZDX. The Type S also has a more aggressive front fascia. The front overhang of this car is also really short, and you can also see the hood is incredibly sculpted. It's definitely going to give it a more aggressive looking design.
The side profile of the car, a few things jump out at me. First are these wheels, 22 inches, the biggest on any Acura ever. They look pretty good, and I like that you can see the Brembo brakes peeking through.
Take a look at this too. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lugs up here. So typically 5. So this is going to be a heavy beast. 22-inch Michelin tires. Let's see. They're the Primacy All Seasons. I'm trying to see if we can see anything. So 275, 40, 22s on this particular one. In the front, is it a staggered or a square setup? Let's take a look. We have 275, 40, 22. So square setup around, which I think's a great decision. Should actually kind of make it fun, I hope, a little bit rotating.
To me, what really stands out, however, is the silver accent along the side rocker panel. Now, Acura says that they did that design for a reason. They claimed that when they in the studio, when they claimed that when they had it fully painted, it didn't stand out as much, and their design team made the decision to kind of go with the silver. I personally think it draws your eyes a little too to the lower portion of the vehicle, which I don't think is a good thing. So my understanding, most owners may end up just painting that. Maybe Acura will also paint it at some point, but also keep in mind, most people end up buying like a white or silver or a black, and it shouldn't stand out quite as much as it does on this brighter blue exterior color. But moving around to the rear here, you can see again, it's not a coupe style SUV, which I kind of very much appreciate as a conventional squared off design. And then looking at the rear of the vehicle, it has the same kind of signature design elements that you expect from an Acura. You have these full LED taillights that have kind of like that chicane style to the taillight design. You have the Type S badging at the back, ZDX badging, and then there's a new electric badge here. You can see it actually tries to look like a plug, but there's actually an E in there. It's actually a really clever design, so I'm looking forward to seeing that on other Acura products.
The Type S comes with this two-tone application. You can only get the black roof if you opt for the Type S. If you go for the A-Spec version, it's all going to be monotone. For me, the black kind of draws a lot of attention to this chrome detailing that doesn't quite make it all the way down the D-pillar. Do you think it looks awesome, or do you think it looks super weird? And then finally, the back of the ZDX. You obviously know that this is an Acura crossover, no doubt about it. To my eyes, it looks like a more futuristic interpretation of the RDX and MDX, and you get this cool little E badge. I think they really want you to know that it's electric.
Ah, the interior. Ooh, this looks kind of familiar. I wonder why. Well, that's because this was co-developed with General Motors. They used a similar platform in other vehicles, As such, they used similar components. I think you'll recognize an awful lot of these components from General Motors.
First of all, the door did sound pretty good. Because this vehicle shares a platform with the Cadillac Lyriq and the Chevrolet Blazer, what is the interior like? Does this feel like an Acura, or does this feel like a General Motors product? And I'm here to tell you, it feels like a General Motors product. It even smells like a General Motors product in here. They kind of use the same kind of materials. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not trying to rip on GM here. And Acura did kind of go with their own design cues in here. But you can see with the overall interior, it's definitely a little bit different, actually a lot different versus what you see in something like the MDX. But the materials, I will say, are very solid. The door panel here you can see has a very nice soft touch injection molded plastic. There's this kind of aluminum trim here on the Type S trim. There's also a lot of ambient lighting, which I sadly can't show you today, but Acura says there's 26 different colors that you can change it to. This area here is also nice and padded. When I look at the door handles, that reminds me of a GM. The switchgear also reminds me of a GM. The buttons here for the seat memory and the door lock switches also remind me of a GM. The steering wheel, however, it looks like an Acura product. I love the flat bottom design. All ZDXs will have a flat bottom wheel. You can see there's a Type S badge here. Then you're also noticing this right here. This is actually a version of Super Cruise. Acura calls it Acura Watch 360 Plus Hands-Free Cruise. The Hands-Free Cruise, of course, means that there's a camera that watches your face. This vehicle has one of the best hands-free driving assistance features you're going to find on the highway today. So that's actually a really good thing. What isn't a good thing for me, however, is when I start pushing this button, that is a GM bong, which I don't like.
Okay, this interior is different for a brand new Acura. I have to say, sitting here in the driver's seat, the connection to GM is evident. And at the risk of upsetting some people, if you Google Chevy Blazer EV interior, you will see some similarities. But I'm not gonna let that spoil this party, because although this 11.3-inch touchscreen and 11-inch driver display may well be from the GM parts bin, but we have no qualms with that. And Acura installed its own software to give it its own unique touch. And I gotta say, this car does come standard with wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, which are two things that GM is moving away from. So points to Acura in that regard. Another benefit of this partnership is the new Acura Watch 360 Plus safety suite. Ooh, isn't that fun to say? And with that, you get a new system called Hands-Free Cruise. If you can read between the lines, that is a version of GM's Super Cruise, which we think is one of, if not the best hands-free driving system on the road.
Very, very cool interior here. Now, again, we're looking at a pretty top trim model, and I'm just gonna pop over to the other side. You guys stay there. And what you're looking at here is fairly similar to the layout we've seen in the Lyriq as an example. So you have a main instrument cluster right here with a huge bezel, Acura gauges that are not similar to GM, so very different style here, a different skin, but obviously this is GM switchgear, GM buttons with an Acura badge in the middle, Super Cruise bar. It literally has Super Cruise. They call it Acura Watch 360 Plus. Everything we're looking at here comes straight from GM.
The rest of the infotainment system here, which this is a very early pre-production car. Acura has asked me not to touch or play with the software. You have an 11.3-inch screen over here, which again is a pretty good size. It's about an inch smaller versus what you find in the MDX, and then you have an 11-inch instrument cluster. Now, the software here is all Google. This is an Android-based operating system, and it's the first Acura to get a Google software system in its interior. And unlike GM products, it's going to have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and over-the-air updates. Because as you guys heard, General Motors is kind of phasing out CarPlay because they're saying their software is going to be better. So kind of keep that in mind. I do also like how the quality in here seems pretty good. It's an early pre-production car. The knobs, they have a nice high-quality tactile feel. You have dual-zone automatic climate control. Again, the buttons here for the climate control, the heated and ventilated seats, the power seats, which are, I believe, 14-way adjustable. They all remind me of some GM products. But again, not necessarily a bad thing. There's some pretty nice materials here, soft touch materials over here. It's also even soft touch up here. You also get a nice heads-up display, and this is also the first Acura to debut their Bang & Olufsen stereo system. It's an 18-speaker sound system. Acura says, again, it's one of the best in the industry. I'll have to test it out at some point for you audiophiles out there. I do love Bang & Olufsen.
These seats rock, by the way. Awesome seats. They claim real leather. I'm not sure if that's going to turn out to be true, but it feels like a nice perforated material. All is pretty good here. So initial glance on interior, good.
As for the front seats, we'll need to spend some more time in them, but they're heated, ventilated, and generally pretty comfortable.
All right, here in the back seat of the ZDX, we're going to do my famous 5'8" short man height test, and I would put this in the good but not great category. If you are a starting player on a sports team, you might not want to roll around in the back seat of one of these, but everything else I'm liking. We have independent climate control back here, love that, heated seats on either side, and generally the legroom looks okay right now. Obviously, because it's an EV, you get a nice flat floor. And we are pretty much the first people to sit in this car that don't work for Acura, but I have to say, looking at these very white seats, this could be a daring decision. If you have kids, good luck with these.
Tons of legroom, tons of headroom. It's really no issue. If I put my head back, interestingly, I'm not hitting my head, which I believe I was in the Lyriq. So I actually think maybe even more headroom than Lyriq. I can see, if you look in here, Alyssa, pop on up, just let me show you guys this. You can see the Bang & Olufsen sound system, speakers right in here. You have a little cargo thing, and then you get the GM switchgear right here. This is straight stuff right there. So very interesting to see the switchgear.
Now, looking at the cargo area, Acura doesn't have final figures for us just yet, but we can kind of go on what the Lyriq has because it's a similar size. The Lyriq has around 29 cubic feet of storage space with the seats up, so I'm assuming this will be around the same. You can see there's this nicely finished area over here with some metallic trim. You can look underneath here. There's a little bit of storage, although I expected that to be a little bit deeper. A lot of other EVs offer that. And if you want to fold down the second row seats, remember this vehicle does not come with a third row. You'll have to buy an MDX to get that. Acura again doesn't have final figures, but the Lyriq has a little over 63 cubic feet of space. So I suspect this should be pretty similar. Obviously by the numbers it's not that impressive, but if you compare it to the old ZDX, this actually has around 10 to 15% more cargo space. So that squared off shape certainly gives it more practicality.
So inside the trunk, I can't show you the underfloor. They say it's not done and ready to be viewed yet, but a fairly large trunk space. This one also has a big Bang & Olufsen sound system upgraded from the AKG that you get in the Lyriq. It sounds like this is going to have the big boy sound system in it. And you can see the seats can unlatch. Hold on, let's see if I got this right. Unlatch, there we go, and they fold down. So big storage area in here. Charging performance specs, the nerd stuff that you guys are going to be interested in. So the vehicle will ship with a CCS connection. There's been no announcement from Acura to switch to North American charging standard as of yet. I really hope they do, and I would encourage them to do so, because access to the supercharger network for this vehicle will really make it have a much better charging experience. Acura and Honda and other automakers are of course involved with this new consortium to build out a network of chargers, but there's been no real hard data on that. They don't even have a name, and of course they're going to be building out NACS and CCS stations. So just throw a North American charging standard plug on there, get access to the supercharger network, and give your owners a better customer experience while charging. That's my recommendation to the engineers and to the Acura team.
I already mentioned that the A-Spec ZDX has an estimated 325 miles of range, but the Type S should be good for an estimated 288 miles. Those figures are good. That's on the higher end of what we've come to expect from this segment. The Audi Q8 e-tron, the Genesis GV70 electrified, and the Mercedes EQE SUV are all slightly lower than that.
So with the entire industry moving toward the electric vehicle space, the all-new ZDX is clearly a very important new addition for the Acura lineup. And after spending some time taking a look at the new ZDX, I have to say I'm totally in love with the styling of this vehicle, including this color. I wish that I could see it without the silver accent along the bottom, but again, that's something that you can easily finish on your own. In terms of the battery tech, obviously borrowing from General Motors and their Ultium architecture was a smart move for Acura, because the company is planning to eventually work on their own development for EVs, but that's probably won't be ready for another 3 to 4 years. So until then, they're kind of sharing the tech with General Motors, which is a pretty good thing. Like I said earlier, up to 325 miles of range, up to 190 kilowatts of max DC fast charging, which means you should probably go from 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes. So not quite as fast as the fastest GM Ultium products, but still very, very good. And then 500 horsepower for the Type S model. Now that's matching the power of the Lyriq. However, it is a little bit less than versus what Chevrolet has quoted for the Blazer SS. So kind of keep that in mind. But I am looking forward to driving this vehicle. It should be around a 4.5-second vehicle 0 to 60 wise. The interior, as you guys saw, shares a lot with General Motors, which can be a good or bad thing depending on, again, how you feel about General Motors as a brand. I personally think GM has been doing a really great job with their interiors as part of a lot of these newer SUVs. So I actually understand why Acura decided to do that. It was a business decision for them. And with the fact that they're sharing parts and sharing development, it has allowed this vehicle to be a little bit more affordable in terms of pricing. Because remember, this is a GM vehicle. It's built in North America, which means it's going to qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit, at least for now.
Ultimately, here's what you need to know. The Acura ZDX is, of course, built on the Ultium platform, which means it's beholden to the same production constraints as GM vehicles have been going through, which GM claims they're now upping production and getting more supply. It's going to have, hopefully, its own character from a look and feel. I believe it does. And I actually think from a value perspective, it is probably the one to go for if you're looking at all this. Just initial glance looking at it. To me, the Blazer looks a little weird, and it's not that much cheaper than Lyriq. The Lyriq, to me, was cool, but like felt cheap and plasticky on the inside and definitely had no performance sporty edge at all. This is going to be a little bit more expensive, but seems to have, again, the full 500 horsepower from the dual motor, the adaptive damper, and the air suspension. And my guess is you're also going to see the Escalade V, which is going to make more power than this, and the Chevy Blazer SS, which is going to make more power than this. So maybe as those come out, my ideas will change, but basically the top spec Acura ZDX at this time, the Type S, is where the all-wheel drive version of the Lyriq sits. So those are equal. The Lyriq V will come ahead. The Chevy Blazer SS will come up from a performance standpoint. The one thing here, though, is the styling, the touch point. It feels and looks really nice. I think really my main concern are going to be how the dealers handle the rollout, how the production capacity handles it. And I really don't think you can go wrong by choosing any of these. And there you go. That's the Acura ZDX. It's actually, out of the three, my favorite.